Man, listen to me. I didn't plan this. I swear to God, this wasn't supposed to end like that. We were supposed to chill, make plans, that's it. She paid for everything. The hotel, the bullshit gifts, luxury crap. And then she laughed at me, snapped. That moment flipped something in my head. I needed it to stop. I didn't think past that, I just acted.
On June 9th, 2024, the body of 41-year-old Simone Wilson was found in a room at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel in Honolulu. The death was initially classified as a suicide, but a detailed investigation revealed signs of murder. The motive for the crime was the victim's accidental reaction to an intimate problem of her 25-year-old companion, which led to an outburst of rage and tragic consequences. Maid Keisha Parker went up to the 12th floor of the hotel at 8 in the morning with a cleaning cart. The 33-year-old black woman had been working at the five-star hotel for 7 years and knew the habits of the guests very well. Room 1237 was supposed to be vacated by 11 in the morning. After knocking on the door of the suite and receiving no response, Parker used her employee key card. The living room was relatively tidy, empty champagne glasses on the table, leftovers from dinner at the restaurant, the TV on. But in the bedroom, a shock awaited her. A young, dark-skinned woman lay on the bed in an expensive sea green evening gown. Her body was motionless, her face had a characteristic bluish-gray tint, her long hair was tousled, her eyes were closed, and the tip of her tongue protruded from her slightly open mouth. Parker immediately left the room and called security. Security manager Damon Wright arrived 4 minutes later, surveyed the scene, and called the Honolulu police. The 42-year-old veteran immediately understood the seriousness of the situation. On the bedside table lay a note written on hotel stationery. The short text apologized for the feelings of shame and humiliation and asked for forgiveness from loved ones. The note was signed with the name Simone, but the handwriting looked uneven, as if the writer was nervous. Detective Carla Washington arrived at the hotel an hour and a half after the body was discovered. The 45-year-old black woman with 20 years of experience specialized in murders and suspicious deaths. Her first glance at the scene raised her suspicions. The registration documents revealed an alarming detail. The room had been booked in the name of Simone Wilson from Atlanta from June 8th to June 10th. Trey Johnson, 25, had checked in with her, but the young man was not in the room. Hotel manager Robert King provided shocking information. Trey Johnson left the hotel around 6 in the morning with a travel bag, citing urgent business matters. He did not check out at the front desk and hurriedly left the building. Concierge Antonio Martinez remembered the couple from the moment they checked in. The elegant middle-aged woman tipped generously and was very attentive to her young companion. The man looked younger and seemed uncomfortable in the luxurious surroundings of the hotel. The initial examination of the body was conducted by medical examiner Diana Rivera. No external wounds were found, and the jewelry remained in place. However, the bluish tint of the face indicated death by asphyxiation. What exactly caused the suffocation remained to be determined. The detective noticed something strange. There were no men's belongings in the room, although according to the registration, there should have been a second guest. The closets contained only women's clothing, and there was only one set of cosmetics in the bathroom. Concierge Marcus Brown confirmed that he had seen a young man in the lobby early in the morning. The man looked agitated, checked the time on his phone several times, and hurriedly left the hotel. He did not ask for help and refused to call a taxi through the hotel service. CCTV cameras provided valuable information. On the evening of June 8th, the couple had dinner at the hotel restaurant, then walked on the beach. In the recordings, the woman looked happy, while the man appeared pensive. The last images showed them entering the elevator around midnight. The morning recordings were even more revealing. At 5:57 a.m., the man left the hotel at a brisk pace, avoiding eye contact with the staff. He was carrying the same travel bag he had arrived with. but his expression had changed dramatically. Neighbors on the same floor shared some disturbing details. The Davises, a married couple in the next room, heard strange noises around midnight. First, there was quiet music and muffled voices, then a woman's laughter that seemed unnaturally loud. Michael Davis, a 60-year-old retiree, noted a sudden silence after the laughter, which lasted about 10 minutes. Then, there were sounds of furniture being moved and a loud television playing until morning. The neighbors did not complain, assuming it was a family quarrel. Medical examiner Rivera established the preliminary time of death as between midnight and 3 a.m. on June 9th. There were no fingerprints on the victim's neck, characteristic of strangulation by hand. The marks indicated the use of a soft object, possibly a pillow. A detailed inspection of the room revealed signs of attempts to conceal the crime. The bedding looked fresh, but analysis showed that it had been washed and remade. Traces of intensive cleaning with detergents were found in the bathroom. The forensic investigator found the victim's hair and fibers from her clothing in the shower drain. The trash cans had been emptied and washed. Scraps of paper were found in the ventilation system, possibly the remains of destroyed documents. The examination of the suicide note yielded a sensational result. Handwriting analysis showed that the text was not written by the victim. The uneven lines, changes in the slant of the letters, and varying pressure indicated that the writer was under stress. It was a forgery. The content of the note also raised doubts. The text was too general for a real suicide note. The mention of feelings of shame and humiliation did not correspond to the character of a successful woman known for her self-confidence. A check of the airlines yielded stunning results. Trey Johnson changed the date of his return ticket from June 10th to June 9th, making a new reservation at 5 a.m., 2 hours after the alleged time of the murder. He paid for the changes in cash. At Honolulu Airport, cameras recorded the extremely suspicious behavior of a young man. He was checking in for a flight at 6:30 a.m., constantly looking around and insistently asking to speed up the procedures. Security personnel noted his unusual nervousness. Airline employee Thomas Green remembered this passenger because of his behavior. The man inquired about the possibility of transferring to other flights in Los Angeles, paid for additional services in cash, and refused to check his luggage in the cargo compartment. Taxi driver Keone Nahale confirmed that he drove the passenger from the hotel to the airport at around 5 a.m. The young black man was quiet and nervous, asking several times to drive faster. At the airport, he gave a large tip and ran to the terminal. By noon, the detectives had a clear picture. A romantic vacation on a paradise island had turned into a cold-blooded murder. A successful woman who had paid for an expensive trip for her young lover had fallen victim to his uncontrollable rage. But what could have provoked such an explosion of violence? What secret drama unfolded in the luxurious room with an ocean view? And why was a woman's laughter the last sound the victim made before her death? An analysis of the victim's personality revealed a successful corporate lawyer with an annual income of $450,000. Simona Wilson was a partner at a prestigious firm in Atlanta, owned expensive real estate, and had never had any problems with the law. The suspect, on the other hand, was a freelancer with an unstable income and lived in a rented room in Los Angeles. The difference in age, social status, and financial resources was enormous. What connected this strange couple? A federal manhunt for Trey Johnson was launched across the United States. Detectives began searching for motives for the crime, which would prove to be more shocking than anyone could have imagined. The suspect's trail was lost at Los Angeles Airport. He did not rent a car, did not order an official taxi, and avoided surveillance cameras. Where did the killer go after fleeing the scene of the crime? And how long would he be able to hide from justice? The suicide theory fell apart like a house of cards. The evidence pointed to a carefully planned attempt to cover up the murder. But the impulsive nature of the crime itself suggested a sudden outburst of rage. What happened in room 1237? Detective Washington contacted the law firm of King, Marshall and Partners in Atlanta, where Simone Wilson worked, to obtain information about the victim. Firm administrator Gloria Henders reported that Simone was one of the firm's leading partners, specializing in corporate law and large company mergers. Simone Nicole Wilson was born on March 23, 1983, in Atlanta, to a middle-class family. Her father, Robert, worked as an accountant for a construction company, and her mother, Dorothy, taught elementary school until her retirement. Simona was an only child and demonstrated outstanding academic abilities from an early age. After graduating from high school with honors, Simona enrolled in Emory University's law school on a scholarship program. She graduated in 2005 with honors and was accepted into the prestigious internship program at King, Marshall and Partners, one of Atlanta's oldest law firms. Simona's career developed rapidly. In 15 years, she rose from junior lawyer to partner, becoming the youngest black woman in the firm's history to achieve this status. She specialized in complex corporate transactions and represented the interests of major companies in the southeastern United States. Simona's colleague, firm partner Marcus Jones, told detectives about the professional qualities of the deceased. According to him, Simona was a brilliant lawyer, with a photographic memory and an ability to find unconventional solutions to complex legal issues. Her clients highly valued her professionalism and willingness to work overtime to achieve results. Financial documents showed that Simone had an annual income of about $450,000, plus bonuses from successful deals. She owned an apartment in the prestigious Buckhead neighborhood worth $800,000, an expensive car, and had significant savings in investment funds. Simona's personal life was less successful than her career. She was married from 2010 to 2017 to fellow lawyer David Clark, but the marriage broke down due to professional rivalry and the lack of children. The divorce was civilized with no property disputes or public scandals. Simona's friend, psychologist Kimberly Rogers, with whom she had been friends since university, told detectives about the deceased's personality. According to her, Simona was a person who was used to controlling all aspects of her life. She made detailed plans for her career growth, investments, vacations, and even personal relationships. After her divorce, Simone avoided serious relationships for several years, focusing on her career. Rogers noted that her friend suffered from loneliness, but was afraid to open up to close relationships again. She often said that men her age were either married or had serious psychological problems. In early 2024, Simone decided to try online dating and signed up for several apps. Rogers helped her create a profile that emphasized her success and independence without scaring off potential partners with excessive ambition. Trey Aaron Johnson was born on November 8, 1998 in Oakland, California, to a working-class family. His mother, Larissa, worked as a supermarket cashier, and his father, Derek, was a mechanic at an auto repair shop until he became disabled due to a work-related injury when Trey was 14. Trey grew up in a disadvantaged neighborhood of Oakland, where drug dealing and street crime were rampant. Despite his difficult family circumstances, he demonstrated an aptitude for the exact sciences and computer technology. In high school, he taught himself programming through online courses and developer forums. After graduating from high school, Trey enrolled at Oakland Community College to study computer technology. However, his family's financial difficulties forced him to work part-time and study remotely. He was unable to complete the program due to the need to support his sick father and younger sister. Trey began working as a freelance web developer in 2019, creating websites for small businesses and startups. His income was unstable, ranging from $2,000 to $4,000 per month depending on the number of orders. He sent most of his earnings to his mother to support his family. Trey's former classmate, programmer Jamal Watson, told detectives about the suspect's personality during his school years. According to him, Trey was a quiet and withdrawn teenager who avoided sports events and large groups of people. He compensated for his social insecurity by immersing himself in technology. Watson also noted that Trey was deeply hurt by his classmates' teasing about his old clothes and lack of money for entertainment. He dreamed of wealth and success, often talking about his plans to start his own technology company and become a millionaire before the age of 30. In 2022, Trey moved to Los Angeles, hoping to find a higher-paying job in the tech industry. However, the job market proved to be extremely competitive, and he continued to work as a freelancer, renting a room in an apartment with 3 roommates in the Hollywood area. Trey's roommate, acting student Tisha Brown, described him as polite but secretive. He rarely participated in communal activities with his neighbors, spending most of his time on his computer in his room. Brown noticed that he often ordered expensive food for delivery, even though he complained about being short on cash. Trey's financial situation was unstable. Bank records showed that his monthly income ranged from $1,500 to $5,000. At the same time, he spent significant amounts on clothing, electronics, and entertainment, trying to create an image of a more successful person than he actually was. In March 2024, Trey registered on the dating app Elite Connections, which positioned itself as a platform for successful professionals. He created a profile where he overstated his income and presented himself as the founder of his own web studio. The photos on Trey's profile were taken by a professional photographer, for which he paid $500. The photos showed him wearing expensive clothes against the backdrop of prestigious locations in Los Angeles. In his description, he listed expensive sports and travel to exotic countries as his hobbies. Simone and Trey met through the Elite Connections app on March 23, 2024. Simone was the first to send Trey a message, attracted by his youth, good looks, and stated entrepreneurial activities. Their correspondence began with a discussion of technology and business. An analysis of their correspondence in the app showed that Trey came across as a charming and attentive conversationalist. He asked Simone questions about her work, admired her achievements, and demonstrated knowledge of law and business gleaned from online sources. The couple's first video meeting took place on March 30th via Messenger. Simone was impressed by Trey's articulateness and confidence, as well as his plans for developing a technology business. She did not notice any signs that he was in a modest rented room, as he had carefully adjusted the lighting and background. Their first in-person date took place on April 15th at an expensive restaurant in Beverly Hills during Simone's business trip to Los Angeles. Trey spent a considerable amount of money preparing for the date. He bought a suit, rented an expensive car for the day, and studied the restaurant's wine list. Marcus Taylor, a waiter at Le Bernardin, remembered the couple because the woman seemed to be a connoisseur of French cuisine, and her companion was clearly trying to match the level of the establishment. The man closely watched the woman's behavior and copied her manner of interacting with the waiters. The date was a success, and the couple began to communicate regularly via video chat and correspondence. Simone was charmed by Trey's youth and enthusiasm, his plans for the future, and his attention to her needs. Trey, in turn, saw Simone as an opportunity to enter the circle of successful people. Simona's friend Rogers noticed changes in her friend's behavior after the romance began. Simona became more cheerful, began to pay more attention to her appearance, and even changed her clothing style to a more youthful one. She often talked about Trey's plans and admired his ambitions. The couple's second date took place in May in Atlanta, when Trey flew to Simone for the weekend. She paid for his tickets and hotel accommodation, explaining that she had more financial resources. Trey accepted her help, but asked her not to mention it to their friends. Simone's colleague Jones met the couple at a corporate party in May and noted the obvious difference in their social status. Trey seemed uncomfortable among lawyers and business people, often remaining silent during discussions about politics and economics. However, Simone was clearly in love and proud of her young partner. The relationship developed rapidly, despite the geographical distance. Simone began to fly to Los Angeles more often, and Trey regularly visited Atlanta. Simone covered all the expenses for their meetings, which gradually became a source of internal tension for Trey. Trey's mother, Larissa Johnson, told detectives how her son described his new girlfriend to her. According to him, Simone was a successful businesswoman who could help him advance his career and enter the circle of influential people. He planned to move to Atlanta to be with her once their relationship had stabilized. However, Trey's neighbor Brown noticed changes in his behavior since early May. He became more irritable, often spoke loudly on the phone, and mentioned several times that he was tired of other people's money. Brown suggested that he was having relationship problems. At the end of May, Simone suggested that Trey take a vacation together in Hawaii to celebrate 3 months of their relationship. She chose an expensive hotel and planned a romantic program with dinners, excursions, and spa treatments. Trey agreed, but asked to split the costs in half. Simona insisted on paying for the trip in full, explaining that she had considerable financial resources and wanted to do something nice for her loved one. Trey accepted the offer, but his reaction to her constant financial dependence became increasingly painful. Psychologist Rogers later told detectives that Simone had sought her advice about her relationship with Trey in early June. She felt that her partner was becoming more withdrawn and irritable, especially when it came to money and their different social statuses. Simona booked the trip to Hawaii on June 2nd through the premium travel agency in Atlanta. She chose a suite at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel with an ocean view and ordered additional services: a romantic dinner on the beach, couples spa treatments, and a private photo shoot at sunset. Travel agent Denise Wilkins noted that the client was very excited about the upcoming trip and checked the details of the accommodation and entertainment several times. She was particularly interested in opportunities for romantic surprises and asked for advice on a gift for her companion. A week before the trip, Trey consulted a psychologist in Los Angeles, complaining of anxiety and relationship problems. Dr. Michael Harris later told detectives that the patient complained of feeling inadequate next to his more successful partner and fearing he would not live up to her expectations. By early June, the relationship between Simone and Trey had reached a critical point of tension. Outwardly, they looked like a happy couple planning a romantic vacation, but internal conflicts related to differences in age, status, and financial capabilities created the conditions for serious conflict. A detailed analysis of the planning for the trip to Hawaii began with a review of Simone Wilson's correspondence with the premium travel agency in Atlanta. The email correspondence showed that the initial inquiry was made on May 28, 2024, with a request for a romantic tour for two in early June. Agent Denise Wilkins provided detectives with copies of all booking documents. Simone chose the Platinum Romance package, costing $8,400, which included first-class flights, 3 nights accommodation in a suite at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, and additional premium services. In her correspondence, Simone was particularly interested in opportunities to create unforgettable experiences. She booked a romantic dinner on a private beach, couples spa treatments, a helicopter tour of the island, and a professional photo shoot at sunset. The total cost of the additional services was $3,200. Wilkins noted in her testimony to detectives the meticulous care with which the client planned every detail of the trip. Simone requested information about the weather, clothing recommendations, and lists of the best restaurants and entertainment. She wanted everything to be perfectly organized for her companion. Bank records showed that Simone paid for the trip with her Gold American Express credit card on May 30th. The total amount was $11,600, which was not a significant expense for her financial situation. She also purchased additional insurance in case the trip was canceled. Correspondence between Simone and Trey in the Messenger app from June 1st to June 7th showed the woman's growing excitement about the upcoming vacation. She regularly sent him links to Hawaiian attractions, photos of the hotel, and plans for each day of their stay. Trey expressed his gratitude for the trip arrangements in his messages, but his messages became increasingly short and formal. He asked several times about the possibility of changing or canceling the reservation, citing urgent work projects. Simone reassured him, promising that the vacation would help him relax. Trey's roommate, Tisha Brown, told detectives that in early June he seemed tense and irritable. He didn't leave his room for several days, refused to eat, and spent a long time talking on the phone in a quiet but agitated voice. On June 6th, Trey went to the West Hollywood Health Medical Center complaining of anxiety and sleep problems. General practitioner Dr. Lisa Martinez prescribed him mild sedatives and recommended that he see a psychologist. His medical records showed that the patient also complained of intimate problems. On June 7th, Simone flew into Los Angeles on an evening flight to depart for Hawaii together the next morning. She stayed at the Beverly Hills Hotel and met Trey for dinner at the hotel restaurant. Maitre d'Antonio Vasquez remembered the couple because of the contrast in their moods. According to Vasquez's observations, the woman was lively and happy, talking a lot about the upcoming trip and making plans. The man looked depressed, barely touched his food, and apologized several times and left the restaurant, supposedly for important phone calls. Hotel cameras recorded the couple going up to Simone's room at around 10 p.m. after dinner. Trey left the hotel at 12:15 a.m. and returned home by taxi. The recording shows that he looked anxious and glanced back at the hotel building several times. On the morning of June 8th, Simone and Trey met at Los Angeles Airport to fly together to Hawaii. Hawaiian Airlines Flight 235 was scheduled to depart at 9 a.m. local time. They checked in for the flight at 7:30 a.m. in the first-class lounge. Check-in agent James Coleman noted that the woman was happy and excited about the upcoming trip. She thanked her companion several times for agreeing to the trip and discussed their plans on the island. The man was silent, focused on filling out the paperwork and avoiding eye contact. In the airport waiting room, surveillance cameras recorded the couple's behavior before boarding. Simone shopped at the duty-free store, buying Hawaiian souvenirs and travel magazines. Trey sat in a chair with his eyes closed, several times refusing Simone's offers to go shopping. First-class flight attendant Gloria King served the couple during the flight and remembered them because of the unusual dynamics of their relationship. The woman constantly initiated conversations, showed her companion guidebooks about Hawaii, and ordered champagne to celebrate the start of their vacation. The man was polite but distant. According to King, during the 5-hour flight, the man mostly slept or listened to music on his headphones. The woman read information about the island, took notes in her notebook, and periodically tried to involve her companion in discussing their plans. Their interaction seemed somewhat strained. The plane landed at Honolulu International Airport at 2 p.m. local time. Airport cameras showed the couple passing through passport control and collecting their luggage. Simone was energized by the warm tropical air and exotic atmosphere, while Trey looked tired after the flight. Taxi driver Keone Nahale drove the couple from the airport to the Royal Hawaiian Hotel on Waikiki Beach. According to him, the woman admired the views of the island the entire way, took pictures of the scenery, and asked questions about local attractions. The man silently looked out the window and did not participate in the conversation. Check-in at the hotel took place at 2:15 p.m. Concierge Antonio Martinez booked them into Suite 1237 with an ocean view. Simone tipped the staff generously and inquired about all the hotel's services. Trey stood aside with the luggage, waiting for the formalities to be completed. The 80-square-meter suite included a spacious living room, a bedroom with a king-size bed, a marble bathroom, and a private balcony with panoramic views of the Pacific Ocean. The room was decorated with fresh tropical flowers and fruit as part of the Platinum Romance package. Maid Keisha Parker escorted the couple to their room and showed them all the amenities. She observed that the woman was delighted with the luxurious accommodations and thanked the man for agreeing to the trip. The man looked around the room silently, seeming overwhelmed by such luxury. After checking in, the couple went on a tour of Oahu, booked through the hotel concierge. Guide Kala Smith took them to the main attractions, Diamond Head, Hanauma Bay, and the Nuuanu Pali Lookout. The 3-hour tour was planned as a romantic introduction to the island. Smith noted in her testimony that the woman showed a genuine interest in Hawaiian history and culture, asking many questions and taking photos at each stop. The man participated in the tour perfunctorily, answering the guide's questions in monosyllables and showing no enthusiasm for what he saw. At the Diamond Head lookout point, Simone asked other tourists to take a photo of them together against the backdrop of the ocean sunset. In the photos, later seized by detectives, the woman can be seen hugging her companion and smiling, while the man looks tense and smiles unnaturally at the camera. They returned to the hotel around 6 p.m. Concierge Marcus Brown helped the couple plan their evening activities. Simone booked a table at the Surf and Turf restaurant for 8 p.m. and ordered a bouquet of orchids to be delivered to their room as a surprise for her companion. The couple spent about an hour in their room getting ready for dinner. The maid cleaning the neighboring rooms heard the sounds of conversation and laughter coming from suite 1237. According to her, the woman's voice sounded cheerful and lively, while the man's was more reserved and quiet. For dinner at Simone's restaurant, Simone wore a new dress she had bought especially for the trip and expensive jewelry. Trey changed into a suit that looked new and expensive. The restaurant's maître d', Robert Wilson, showed the couple to a table by the window with a view of the ocean. The dinner lasted 2 hours and included a tasting menu of local seafood accompanied by expensive French champagne. Waiter Jason Williams served the table and noticed a strange atmosphere between the couple. The woman was lively and proactive, while the man was silent and pensive. According to Williams' observations, the woman tried to engage her companion in the romantic atmosphere of the dinner, offering toasts, compliments, and plans for the next day. The man was polite but distant, often looking out the window at the ocean or studying the menu instead of keeping up the conversation. During the main course, Simone presented Trey with a gift, an expensive Swiss watch worth $3,000. She explained that this gesture was a token of gratitude for their relationship and a desire to mark an important milestone in their romance. Trey accepted the gift but looked more embarrassed than happy. The restaurant's cameras captured the moment the gift was presented. The recording shows the woman handing the man a jewelry box, which he opens and examines the contents. His expression is difficult to interpret. It could be surprise, awkwardness, or even irritation. After dinner, the couple took a walk on Waikiki Beach in the moonlight. Beach guard Tyler Jones saw them around 10:30 p.m. walking along the sand at the water's edge. The woman held her companion's arm as they walked slowly and talked quietly. Jones noted that they weren't the only romantic couple on the beach that evening, but they caught his attention because of the contrast in their moods. The woman seemed happy and in love, while the man appeared pensive and distant. The walk lasted about half an hour. Their return to the hotel was recorded by the lobby cameras at 11:15 p.m. Simone and Trey took the elevator up to their room, the woman leaning on her companion's shoulder. The recording shows her whispering something in his ear, and he nods, but his expression remains serious. Night porter David Clark was on duty and saw the couple heading for the elevators. According to him, they looked like typical tourists after a romantic evening, although the man seemed more reserved than lovers in Hawaii usually are. The room had all the elements of a romantic setting ordered through the concierge service. Candles, rose petals, chilled champagne, and chocolates set the mood for an intimate evening. Soft Hawaiian music was also playing in the room through the audio system. Michael Davis, a guest in the neighboring room, went to bed around midnight and heard sounds coming from suite 1237. At first, it was quiet music and muffled voices. Then the sounds became louder and less distinct. Davis didn't think much of it, assuming his neighbors were celebrating. Room service received a call from suite 1237 at 11:40 p.m. A female voice ordered a light dinner and an extra bottle of champagne. The order was delivered at midnight by waiter Kevin Taylor. Taylor noted that the door was opened by a woman in loungewear who looked slightly disheveled. She was friendly, paid generously, but did not invite him into the room. The suite was quiet, with soft music playing and the TV off. The man did not appear during the delivery. Corridor cameras showed the last movements in the area of room 1237. At 24:15, a woman in a bathrobe appeared in the corridor and went to the ice machine. She filled a bucket with ice and returned to her room a few minutes later. The hotel's night shift worked as usual, with no serious incidents reported. Duty manager Patrick O'Connor made his usual rounds and received no complaints from guests about noise or disturbance. Suite 1237 did not attract much attention from the staff. By the end of their first day in Hawaii, the couple had established a certain rhythm of interaction. Simone was the initiator of all activities, the planner, and the financial sponsor of the trip. Trey participated in the events, but maintained an emotional distance and appeared increasingly tense as the romantic scenario unfolded. The reconstruction of the events of the evening of June 8th in room 1237 began with a detailed analysis of the statements of the neighbors on the floor of the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. Detective Washington interviewed all the guests on the 12th floor who were in the hotel at the critical time between midnight and 6 a.m. on June 9th. The Davis couple from California occupied the adjacent room 1235 and went to bed around midnight after a long day of sightseeing. Michael Davis, a 60-year-old retiree, told detectives that around midnight he heard music and muffled voices coming from the neighboring room. According to Davis, at first the atmosphere in the neighboring room sounded romantic. Quiet music, laughter, sounds of movement around the room. Around 1 a.m., the music became louder, which woke his wife. The couple decided not to complain, assuming that their neighbors were celebrating their honeymoon or anniversary. Michael's wife, Patricia Davis, 58, provided more detailed information about the sounds coming from the room. According to her, at around 1:30 a.m., she heard a woman's laughter that seemed unnatural and too loud to her. The laughter was repeated several times at intervals. Patricia also noted that after the laughter, there was a sudden silence that lasted about 10 minutes. Then there were sounds that she interpreted as furniture being moved or cleaning. Something heavy was being moved across the floor, and muffled thuds could be heard. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the Davises heard the sound of a television playing at high volume. The program was tuned to a music channel, which seemed strange for the middle of the night. The television played until morning, disturbing the neighbors' sleep, but they did not dare to complain to the administration. The guest in room 1239, businessman Robert King from New York, returned to the hotel late after a business meeting. He went up to his floor at around 2:30 a.m. and noticed that the sound of a television was coming from room 1237. King also noticed that there was light visible under the door and a smell coming through the crack, which he described as sweet and unpleasant. The man assumed that the guests were smoking or using scented candles, which was a violation of the hotel's non-smoking room policy. Night shift maid Layla Jones was cleaning the floor around 3 a.m. and also noticed loud TV sounds coming from the suite. She approached the door several times, intending to knock and ask them to lower the volume, but decided not to disturb the guests in the expensive room without complaints from other guests. Jones noted that she noticed an unusual detail. A wet towel was lying under the door of the room, as if it had been used to wipe the floor. This seemed strange to her, as the day shift maids did not leave towels in the hallways, and guests did not usually take linen out of their rooms. Corridor CCTV cameras recorded activity near room 1237 during the night. At 2:47 a.m., the door to the room opened slightly, but no one came out into the corridor. A few minutes later, the door closed, but the light under it remained on. At 3:15 a.m., the cameras showed a man's hand reaching out of the room and placing a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the outside door handle. The person's face was not visible, but the size of the hand suggested that it was a man of average build. Forensic pathologist Diana Rivera conducted a detailed examination of Simone Wilson's body after it was transported to the Honolulu morgue. The external examination confirmed the initial observations of death by asphyxiation, but revealed additional details indicating the violent nature of the death. The expert found micro-damage on the victim's neck, characteristic of compression by soft objects rather than hands. The marks indicated that the strangulation was carried out with a pillow or other textile material pressed against the face with considerable force. The airway obstruction lasted several minutes. Rivera also found marks on the victim's body, indicating attempts to resist. There were faint marks on the wrists from being held down, and small bruises on the legs, indicating that the woman had tried to kick back. Fabric fibers and particles of another person's skin were found under her fingernails. Analysis of the stomach contents showed the presence of alcohol in a concentration consistent with moderate consumption of champagne. No narcotic or toxic substances were found. The last meal was consumed 2 to 3 hours before death, which corresponded to the time the food was delivered to the room. A gynecological examination revealed signs of recent sexual activity, but without traces of coercion or violence. This indicated that the intimate contact had been consensual before the conflict arose. The expert determined the time of death to be between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. on June 9th, based on body temperature, the degree of rigor mortis, and other post-mortem changes. Death was not instantaneous. The strangulation lasted several minutes, indicating that the actions were premeditated. Criminalist Stephen Chang conducted a detailed analysis of the crime scene in room 1237 after it had been sealed off. The examination revealed multiple signs that after the victim's death, someone had attempted to cover up the evidence and make it look like suicide. The bedding was neatly smoothed out, but analysis showed that it had originally been badly crumpled and had stains of biological origin. The sheets had been washed in the hotel bathroom with soap and hot water, then dried and put back on the bed. Traces of the victim's saliva and makeup were found on the pillows, indicating that they had been used to suffocate her. One of the pillows had internal damage to the filling, indicating that it had been compressed. The pillowcases had been washed, but forensic experts found microparticles of the victim's hair in the fabric seams. Traces of intensive cleaning were found in the bathroom. The sink, shower stall, and floor had been thoroughly washed with hotel cleaning products. However, the victim's hair and fibers from her clothing were found in the shower drain, indicating attempts to wash away evidence. The trash cans in the room had been emptied and washed. Scraps of paper were found in the ventilation system, which could have been the remains of destroyed documents or notes. A condom was also found in the ventilation system, which contradicted the version of the girl's suicide due to unrequited love. Analysis of fingerprints in the room showed the presence of 2 people. Simone's fingerprints were found on all surfaces that a guest would normally touch. Trey's fingerprints were found in unusual places: bathroom door handles, window frames, surfaces that are usually wiped down during cleaning. Of particular interest were Trey's fingerprints on the suicide note. The examination showed that the paper had been held twice, first when writing the text, then when placing it on the bedside table. Handwriting analysis established that the note was not written by the victim. Graphological analysis of the note revealed signs of stress in the writer, uneven lines, changes in the slant of the letters, and varying pressure on the paper. Comparison with samples of Trey's handwriting from his documents showed a match in the individual characteristics of the writing. The content of the note also raised questions. The text was too general and did not contain the personal details characteristic of suicide notes. The mention of feelings of shame and humiliation did not correspond to the victim's character, who was known to be a confident person. Technical examination of the electronic devices in the room showed that the TV had been turned on at 2:04 a.m. and tuned to a music channel at high volume. The air conditioner was running at full power, which could have been an attempt to mask sounds or smells. Simone's cell phone was on charge, with the last activity recorded at 1:23 a.m. She was checking messages on social media. Trey's phone was not found in the room, indicating that he had taken it with him when he left. The hotel's CCTV cameras recorded Trey's movements after the estimated time of death. At 4:30 a.m., he went down to the hotel lobby and asked the night porter for an early checkout. Concierge David Clark told detectives that the man explained the need for an early departure as an urgent work call. He appeared agitated, checked the time on his phone several times, and insisted on an immediate taxi to the airport. Clark also noted that the man had scratches on his arms and neck, which he explained were an allergic reaction to tropical plants. His clothes were wrinkled, and his hair was disheveled, which was unusual for the early hours of the morning when most people look fresh after sleep. When checking out, Trey paid for additional hotel services in cash, although all expenses had been covered by Simona's credit card when they checked in. He explained that he did not want to disturb his sleeping companion and wanted to pay for the minibar and additional services himself. Lobby cameras recorded Trey waiting for a taxi at the hotel entrance. He stood apart from the main flow of guests, avoided eye contact with staff, and went outside several times to check for the car's arrival. Taxi driver Kale Nakamura confirmed that he drove a young black man from the Royal Hawaiian Hotel to the airport at around 5 a.m. on June 9th. The passenger was quiet, nervous, and asked several times to drive faster, citing the danger of missing his flight. Nakamura noted the passenger's strange behavior. He constantly looked back through the rear window, as if he were afraid of being followed. He responded to the driver's questions about his impressions of Hawaii with monosyllabic answers and clearly wanted to end the conversation. At Honolulu Airport, Trey changed his ticket reservation from June 10th to June 9th, paying extra for the change in cash. Airline employee Thomas Green remembered this passenger because of his insistent demands to speed up the rebooking process. Airport security cameras showed Trey passing through security at 6:30 a.m. He was nervous during the document check, apologized several times to security personnel, and rushed the procedure. Only the most necessary items were found in his carry-on luggage. An analysis of Trey's behavior during the critical period showed classic signs of an attempt to conceal a crime. His actions after the victim's death were aimed at creating a false picture of suicide and securing his own alibi by quickly leaving the scene. The combination of evidence, medical, technical, witness testimony, and analysis of the suspect's behavior indicated that Simone Wilson's death was not a suicide. Detectives had sufficient grounds to open a criminal case for murder and issue a federal warrant for Trey Johnson. A reconstruction of events showed that after returning to the room, a conflict arose between the couple, which escalated into physical violence. Trey's attempts to cover his tracks and stage a suicide indicated that he understood the gravity of his actions and wanted to avoid responsibility. A detailed investigation into the motives for the crime began with a review of Trey Johnson's medical records, which detectives obtained after obtaining a court order. Medical records from the West Hollywood Health Center showed that the suspect had repeatedly visited doctors with complaints of intimate problems between February and June 2024. Dr. Lisa Martinez, Trey's attending physician, provided detectives with information about the patient's condition in compliance with confidentiality requirements as part of the criminal investigation. The first visit took place on February 7th with complaints of periodic erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation. Medical records showed that Trey attributed his problems to psychological stress and insecurity in his relationships with women. He told his doctor about his fear of not meeting his partner's expectations, especially if she was more experienced or socially successful. Dr. Martinez ordered a comprehensive examination to rule out physiological causes of erectile dysfunction. Blood tests showed normal testosterone levels and no endocrine disorders. An ultrasound examination revealed no blood vessel abnormalities or other organic problems. Psychological testing, conducted in March, revealed high levels of anxiety and low self-esteem, particularly in matters related to sexual activity. Trey showed signs of what is known as anticipatory anxiety, in which fear of intimacy exacerbates potency problems. Dr. Martinez prescribed a course of psychotherapy and mild medication to relieve anxiety. However, records showed that Trey attended his scheduled sessions irregularly and often skipped his medication, explaining this by his busy schedule and unwillingness to acknowledge the problem. In May, the patient returned with complaints of worsening symptoms due to the start of a serious relationship with a woman older than him. He told his doctor that he was afraid of disappointing his partner and losing the relationship because of his problems. His anxiety about this only exacerbated his erectile dysfunction. The medical record also contained information that Trey was interested in radical treatments, including surgery and experimental drugs. Dr. Martinez discouraged him from taking extreme measures, emphasizing the psychological nature of the problem. Detective Washington contacted psychologist Michael Harris, whom Trey had consulted in June. Dr. Harris provided information about the patient's psychological state as part of his cooperation with law enforcement. According to Harris, Trey suffered from deep inferiority complexes related not only to intimate problems, but also to social status. He was painfully aware of the difference in income and education between him and his partner, and felt unworthy of her attention. The psychologist noted that the patient showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder combined with depressive tendencies. Trey sought to create a false image of a successful entrepreneur, but internally, he was aware of the discrepancy between reality and the image he presented. Harris was particularly alarmed by Trey's stories of fantasies of violence against women who allegedly humiliated his male dignity. The patient described scenarios of revenge for imaginary or real insults, although he emphasized that he would never carry them out. The last consultation with the psychologist took place on June 5th, 3 days before the trip to Hawaii. Trey was extremely excited about the upcoming vacation, fearing that intimacy with his partner in a romantic setting would spell disaster for their relationship. Detectives also interviewed Trey's acquaintances to obtain additional information about his character and behavior. His roommate, Tisha Brown, said that in recent months, she had witnessed strange episodes in Trey's behavior. According to Brown, Trey often yelled at women on the phone or while watching television, using offensive language and accusing them of arrogance and disrespect toward men. These outbursts of anger were disproportionate to the situations that provoked them. Brown also noted that Trey had a habit of exaggerating his achievements in conversations with neighbors. He talked about large contracts and successful projects that, judging by his lifestyle, did not correspond to reality. At the same time, he reacted painfully to any questions about the details of his work. Trey's former classmate Jamal Watson provided detectives with information about the suspect's complexes forming back in his school years. According to him, Trey was often the subject of ridicule by his peers because of his family's financial situation and his insecurity in communicating with girls. Watson recalled a specific incident from his senior year when Trey was publicly rejected by a girl who had invited him to the prom. She explained her refusal by saying that he could not afford decent clothes and transportation. This episode deeply traumatized Trey and shaped his negative attitude toward women from more affluent families. Trey's freelance colleagues also provided information about his professional conduct. Web designer Kevin Lopez, with whom Trey collaborated on several projects, noted his tendency to react aggressively to criticism of his work. According to Lopez, Trey was unable to adequately accept client feedback, especially when it came from women. He interpreted professional criticism as a personal insult and would terminate contracts over minor comments about the quality of his work. Detective Henderson interviewed Trey's former girlfriends to understand the dynamics of his relationships with women. Student Maria Sanchez dated him for 2 months in 2023 and described his strange behavior. According to Sanchez, Trey was obsessed with creating the impression of a successful and experienced man, but often lost control of the situation when attempting intimacy. He reacted painfully to any displays of initiative on her part, interpreting them as doubts about his masculinity. Sanchez also noted that Trey had a habit of blaming his partner for his failures in bed. He claimed that she was too demanding or experienced, which prevented him from concentrating. The relationship ended after a scandal when he accused her of infidelity without any grounds. Expert psychiatrist Dr. Patricia Williams compiled a professional profile of the suspect based on medical records, witness testimony, and analysis of his behavior. In her conclusion, Trey exhibited signs of mixed personality disorder with narcissistic and antisocial traits. The main characteristics of Trey's personality were a grandiose sense of self-importance, combined with deep insecurity, a need for constant admiration and recognition, an inability to empathize, and a tendency toward manipulative behavior. These traits were exacerbated by problems with sexual self-esteem. Dr. Williams noted that this type of personality is prone to impulsive, aggressive actions in situations perceived as threatening to self-esteem. Laughter or ridicule from a partner could provoke an uncontrollable outburst of rage, especially in an intimate setting. The expert also emphasized that the victim's attempts to stage a suicide indicated the perpetrator's rational thinking after committing an impulsive act. This showed that he understood the consequences of his actions and was capable of planning to cover up the crime. Based on all the data collected, detectives reconstructed the most likely sequence of events in the hotel room on the night of June 8th to 9th. After a romantic dinner and a walk, the couple returned to their room around midnight in high spirits. Simona, inspired by the romantic atmosphere of the vacation and Trey's gift of an expensive watch, initiated intimacy. Trey, who was under chronic stress due to his problems, felt pressure to live up to the expectations of his more experienced partner. The attempt at intimacy ended in failure due to Trey's erectile dysfunction. The situation became even more tense due to the expensive romantic setting and the feeling that he had disappointed the woman who had spent a significant amount of money on the vacation. Simona, trying to defuse the awkward situation and show that the problem was not critical, laughed and tried to calm Trey with a joke or a light comment. For her, it was a natural way to relieve the tension, but for Trey, the laughter confirmed his worst fears. In a state of acute humiliation and rage, Trey interpreted Simone's reaction as a mockery of his masculinity. All the accumulated complexes and frustrations associated with social inequality in their relationship focused on this moment. An impulsive, aggressive reaction developed quickly. Trey grabbed a pillow and pressed it against Simone's face, trying to silence her. Initially, this may have been an attempt to scare or humiliate her in response, but the situation quickly got out of control. Simone tried to resist, which explains the bruises and scratches found on her body. The struggle lasted several minutes, during which Trey did not control the amount of pressure he applied. He may not have realized that he was causing fatal injuries. When Simone stopped resisting, Trey realized the seriousness of the situation. He spent the next few hours trying to hide the traces of the crime and create a suicide scenario. Turning up the TV volume was an attempt to mask the sounds of cleaning. Writing a fake suicide note, washing the bedding, cleaning the bathroom, and moving the body. All these actions showed that after his impulsive crime, Trey acted rationally, trying to avoid responsibility. His early escape from Hawaii was an unplanned decision made in a state of panic. Changing his plane tickets, paying for additional services in cash, and acting nervously at the airport all pointed to a hasty attempt to flee the scene of the crime. An analysis of his motives showed that the crime was not committed for mercenary reasons or as a premeditated act of revenge, but as a result of an acute psychological reaction to a situation perceived as a humiliation of his male dignity. Inferiority complexes, exacerbated by intimate problems, created an explosive psychological environment. Detectives determined that Trey did not plan the murder in advance. All of his behavior up to the critical moment indicated a desire to impress Simone and strengthen their relationship. The crime was impulsive in nature and was provoked by a combination of psychological factors. However, his actions after the murder showed the suspect's ability to plan rationally and attempt to avoid punishment. This ruled out the possibility of declaring him insane and indicated a full understanding of the nature and consequences of his actions. Trey Johnson's psychological profile, compiled on the basis of all the data collected, revealed a personality with deep complexes and a tendency to react aggressively in situations that threatened his self-esteem. These characteristics, combined with specific circumstances, led to the tragic outcome. Trey Johnson was arrested on June 11, 2024, at his mother's apartment in Oakland, where he had flown in from Los Angeles the night before. The arrest operation was conducted jointly by the FBI and the Alameda County Police Department, under the direction of Detective Carla Washington, who had traveled from Hawaii specifically to participate in the arrest. A federal warrant for the suspect's arrest was issued on June 10th, after a preliminary investigation in Hawaii was completed. FBI agents tracked Trey's credit card and cell phone usage, which allowed them to locate him at his mother's home on 73rd Street in Oakland. Larissa Johnson's home was under surveillance from early morning on June 11th. Agents observed the suspect through the first-floor windows, where he was in the living room with his mother and younger sister. The arrest was made at 7 a.m., when the risk of resistance or escape was minimal. Trey did not resist arrest. He greeted the agents in his home clothes, looking like a man who had not slept all night. During a personal search, his cell phone, wallet with documents, and a small amount of cash were seized. No weapons or narcotics were found. The suspect's mother, Larissa Johnson, was extremely shocked by her son's arrest. The 53-year-old woman told agents that Trey had returned home on the evening of June 10th in a depressed state, explaining that he was having problems with his girlfriend. She had no idea how serious the situation was. The first interrogation took place at the Oakland police station on June 11th at 10 a.m. Detective Washington, FBI agent Robert Miller, the suspect's lawyer David Stevens, and a court reporter were present. The lawyer was appointed at Trey's request from among the Alameda County public defenders. Trey refused to answer questions until his lawyer arrived, which was his constitutional right. He appeared depressed and frightened, asking several times for water and medical attention, complaining of nausea and dizziness. The doctor on duty examined him and found no conditions requiring hospitalization. After his attorney arrived, Trey agreed to give a statement about the murder of Simone Wilson. The interrogation transcript showed that the suspect understood the charges against him, but was in a state of severe emotional distress and periodically lost control of his emotions. When initially questioned about his whereabouts on the night of the murder, Trey responded evasively, claiming that he had been in the hotel room with Simone, but had slept through the night and could not remember the details. He insisted on the suicide theory, claiming that he had discovered his girlfriend's body in the morning and left the hotel in a panic. Detective Washington presented Trey with medical evidence that Simone's death could not have been a suicide. The medical examiner's conclusion about the nature of the injuries, the analysis of the crime scene, and the fake suicide note destroyed the suspect's version of a natural death. After reviewing the evidence, Trey remained silent for a long time, consulted with his lawyer, and finally asked for a break in the interrogation. During the break, he cried several times, refused to eat, and asked to contact his mother to convey his apologies. The second day of questioning, June 12th, brought a confession. Trey confirmed that he had indeed killed Simone Wilson in a fit of rage after a conflict in the hotel room. He recounted in detail the sequence of events on the night of the crime and his attempts to hide the evidence. According to Trey's testimony, the conflict began after a failed attempt at intimacy, when his problems with erectile dysfunction became apparent. Simone's laughter, which she intended to diffuse the tension, was perceived by him as a humiliating mockery of his masculinity. Trey said that in a fit of rage, he grabbed a pillow and pressed it against Simone's face, trying to silence her. He did not plan to kill her, but he did not control the force of the impact or the duration of the suffocation. When he realized she was not breathing, he tried to revive her, but it was too late. The suspect described in detail his actions after realizing the victim was dead. His attempts to make it look like suicide included writing a fake note, cleaning the room, washing the bedding, and moving the body. He hoped that the suicide story would allow him to avoid suspicion. Trey also admitted that he changed his plane tickets and left Hawaii early in an attempt to create an alibi. He planned to return to Los Angeles and continue his normal life, hoping that his connection to the crime would not be established. Fear of exposure led him to seek support from his mother. Attorney Stevens stated that his client is willing to cooperate fully with the investigation and is remorseful for his actions. Trey agreed to undergo a psychiatric evaluation and provide all necessary information for the investigation. He also expressed his desire to apologize to the victim's family. The psychiatric evaluation was conducted by Dr. Michael Harris, a forensic psychiatrist with 25 years of experience. Trey's examination was conducted over the course of a week at a medical facility with the participation of psychologists, neurologists, and other specialists. The expert's conclusion showed that Trey was in a state of deep emotional stress at the time of the crime, but retained the ability to understand the nature and social danger of his actions. No mental disorders that would exclude criminal responsibility were identified. Dr. Harris noted that the suspect had a personality disorder with narcissistic traits, complicated by chronic self-esteem issues. These personality traits contributed to the development of an aggressive reaction, but did not deprive him of his ability to control his behavior. The expert concluded that the crime was committed in a state of sudden intense emotional agitation caused by the victim's behavior, which the defendant perceived as humiliating. This circumstance could be considered by the court as a mitigating factor. A preliminary hearing in the case was held on June 20th in the Federal Court of Hawaii, presided over by Judge David Nakamura. The prosecution was represented by federal prosecutor Lisa Chen, and the defense by a team of lawyers led by David Stevens. Trey was formally charged with second-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. The prosecution insisted that the defendant acted with particular cruelty and that his attempts to conceal the crime demonstrated his understanding of the illegality of his actions. The defense objected to the second-degree murder charge, arguing that the crime was committed in the heat of passion without premeditation. The lawyers asked the court to consider reclassifying the charge to manslaughter. The trial began on August 15th and lasted 6 weeks. 12 jurors participated in the trial, 6 men and 6 women of various ages and ethnic backgrounds, selected in accordance with federal court procedures. The key evidence for the prosecution was the results of a forensic medical examination, testimony from witnesses from Hawaii and the mainland United States, surveillance camera footage, and the defendant's confession. Particular attention was paid to proving the intent to conceal the crime. The defense based its strategy on proving the impulsive nature of the crime and the defendant's severe psychological state. The lawyers presented medical documents about Trey's potency problems and expert opinions on the impact of these problems on his mental state. During the trial, particular attention was paid to the provocative behavior of the victim. The defense argued that Simone's laughter at the critical moment was the direct cause of the defendant's emotional reaction. However, the prosecution emphasized the disproportionate nature of the reaction to a minor provocation. Psychiatric experts gave different assessments of Trey's mental state. Defense expert Dr. Patricia Williams emphasized the severity of the psychological trauma suffered by the defendant at the moment of the alleged humiliation. Prosecution expert Dr. Robert Clark pointed to the defendant's ability to plan rationally after the crime. Witness testimony painted a contradictory picture of the defendant's personality. Trey's mother and sister described him as a caring and non-aggressive person who never showed any tendency toward violence. Former girlfriends and acquaintances spoke of his insecurities and periodic outbursts of anger. The victim's family was represented in court by Simone's parents, Robert and Dorothy Wilson. They attended all the hearings but did not testify at the request of the prosecution to avoid additional emotional distress. Simone's colleagues from the law firm testified about her character and professional qualities. They unanimously described her as a talented lawyer, a decent person, and a caring friend who did not deserve such a tragic death. The jury returned a verdict of guilty for Trey on second-degree murder on September 27, 2024. The jury rejected the defense's motion to reclassify the charge to manslaughter, but agreed that there were mitigating circumstances. Sentencing took place on October 5, 2024. Judge Nakamura sentenced Trey Johnson to 25 years in federal prison.